Cardigan and Flicker, Valley Guardians. In a lush valley, nestled between two mountains, there lived a kind and gentle dragon named Cardigan. Cardigan was unlike any other dragon in the valley. Instead of hoarding gold and jewels, Cardigan's heart was filled with love for flowers. Flowers of all colors, shapes, and sizes filled her heart with joy. Cardigan spent her days exploring the valley, searching for the most vibrant and fragrant blooms. She would carefully collect these flowers and arrange them into beautiful bouquets, which she would then present to her fellow dragons as gifts. Cardigan also loved to plant gardens, transforming barren patches of land into colorful havens of beauty. One sunny morning, Cardigan awoke to a sight that filled her with dismay. The flowers in her garden, once so vibrant and full of life, were drooping and wilting. Their petals were losing their color, and their once sweet scent was fading away. Cardigan's heart sank. She knew something was terribly wrong. With a heavy heart, Cardigan set off on a journey to the sacred tree, a wise and ancient being that resided deep within the valley's heart. The sacred tree was known for its healing powers and its abilities to restore life to even the most withered plants. Cardigan traveled for days, her heart filled with worry for her beloved flowers. Finally, she reached the sacred tree, a majestic being with branches that stretched towards the sky. At the base of the tree, a pool of shimmering water bubbled gently. The sacred tree spoke in a voice as soft as rustling leaves.
Cardigan, the flowers are thirsty. The land has been parched by a long drought, and the flowers are losing their strength.
Cardigan's eyes widened. She had not realized that the lack of rain was affecting her flowers so severely. The sacred tree continued.
Take some of this magical water, Cardigan. It will nourish the flowers and bring them back to life.
Cardigan filled her sack with shimmering water and thanked the sacred tree for its wisdom. She then hurried back to her garden, her heart filled with hope. Upon reaching her garden, Cardigan gently poured the magical water over the wilting flowers. As the water touched their petals, they began to stir. Colors returned to them, and their heads lifted proudly once more. Cardigan watched in delight as her garden came back to life. The flowers bloomed with renewed vigor, their fragrance filling the air once again. Cardigan's heart overflowed with joy. She knew that the flowers were safe and that the valley would once again be filled with their beauty. In a valley, surrounded by many trees, there lived a small dragon named Flicker. Flicker was a curious and gentle creature, with beautiful blue scales and bright green eyes that sparkled like stars. He loved exploring the lush meadows, chasing butterflies, and collecting shiny pebbles. But there was always one thing about Flicker that made him feel different from the other dragons. All the other dragons in the valley could breathe fire, their flames dancing and leaping as they soared through the sky. But Flicker, no matter how hard he tried, could only breathe soft, warm puffs of air. He felt disappointed and wondered if there was something wrong with him. One day, Flicker was playing near the edge of the valley when he heard a soft whimper. He followed the sound and found a small, fluffy rabbit trapped in a thorny bush. The rabbit was crying and scared, and Flicker's heart went out to him. Flicker tried to reach the rabbit, but the thorns were sharp and painful. He remembered his warm breath and decided to try it. He puffed gently on the thorns, and to his surprise, they withered away, freeing the rabbit. The rabbit was overjoyed and thanked Flicker for his help. Flicker smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with fire. He realized that his breath, though not fiery, would still be useful and comforting. From that day on, Flicker used his breath to help others. He warmed chilled berries for his friends. He dried their wings after a rainstorm. And and he even helped the lost bird find his way home. He discovered that his breath was a source of warmth and kindness, just as powerful as fire. One day, as Flicker was playing with his friends, a mischievous imp set a trap. Intending to scare the dragons, the imp lit a pile of dry leaves, and soon the flames were licking at the edge of the valley. The other dragons panicked, their fiery breath unable to extinguish the flames, but Flicker remained calm. He remembered how his breath had helped the rabbit, and he knew he could help now. Flicker gathered up his friends and instructed them to form a circle around the fire. Then he began to breathe, his puffs of warm air joining together to create a gentle breeze. The breeze blew soft on the flames, fanning them out and eventually extinguishing them. The dragons cheered, amazed at Flicker's unique ability. They realized that Flicker's breath was just as powerful as their fire. Cardigan the flower dragon, with scales the color of moss after a spring rain, and horns that gleamed like polished gold, hummed a gentle tune as she tended to her garden. Her breath, instead of fire, coaxed forth blossoms of every imaginable hue. Roses unfurled in velvety reds, lilies stood tall and white, and tiny forget-me-nots carpeted the ground in a sea of blue. Nearby, a small blue dragon with wide, worried eyes watched her. This was Flicker, and unlike the other young dragons in the Whispering Valley, he couldn't breathe fire. Instead, when he tried, only puffs of shimmering, harmless smoke would emerge, often smelling faintly of blueberries. The other young dragons sometimes teased him, calling him Flicker the Fizzle, but Cardigan was always kind. "Good morning, Flicker," Cardigan rumbled, her voice like the rustling of leaves in a gentle breeze. A sunflower, taller than Flicker, turned his face towards the sound. "Good morning, Cardigan," Flicker mumbled, kicking a loose pebble with his claw. The air smelled smoky again. Cardigan's horns dimmed slightly. For weeks now, strange, uncontrolled fires had been breaking out across the valley. They weren't the usual playful sparks of young dragons learning to breathe fire. These were wild and destructive, leaving patches of scorched earth and frightened creatures in their wake. The older dragons had tried everything, roaring warnings, creating windstorms to extinguish the flames, but the fires kept returning. "It's that pesky imp again, I reckon." Cardigan sighed, her nose twitching with annoyance, always causing trouble. The imp was a shadowy, mischievous creature that delighted in chaos. No one had ever seen it clearly, but its presence was always marked by the sudden, inexplicable outbursts of fire. Do you think we could do something about it?" Flicker asked hesitantly, his blue scales seeming to dim with doubt. Cardigan looked at the small dragon, her kind eyes filled with warmth. "Alone? Perhaps not. But together, Flicker, we might just have a chance." And so, the unlikely duo set off, Cardigan with her knowledge of the valley and her calming presence, and Flicker, small and nimble, with a heart full of courage despite his lack of fire. Their first stop was the Whispering Woods, where a particularly nasty fire had recently swept through, leaving behind blackened trees and frightened squirrels. They found Harold, an old grumpy badger whose burrow had been narrowly sparred.
"That horrid imp appeared like a shadow, and then poof, flames everywhere."
"Did you see anything else, Harold?" Cardigan asked gently, coaxing a patch of clover to bloom near the badger's den. Harold squinted.
"Just a faint smell of something sour, like unripe berries, right before the fire started."
Flicker's ears perked up. "Sour berries? I've smelled that before." He remembered the time near the craggy peaks when he stumbled upon a patch of strange, pungent berries. Their next clue came from a family of field mice, whose meadow had been threatened. The mother mouse, her whiskers trembling, described a fleeting glimpse of a dark shape darting away just as the flames erupted. "It moved like smoke, but angrier," she squeaked. Cardigan and Flicker followed the trail of subtle clues. the lingering sour scent, the direction the shadow figure had fled. Their journey led them towards the shadowy crags, a jagged and foreboding part of the valley that most dragons avoid. As they ventured deeper into the crags, the air grew heavy and the sour smell intensified. They finally reached a narrow crevice. Hiding behind a curtain of thorny vines, a faint, flickering light emanated from within. "This must be it," Cardigan whispered, her golden horns glowing softly. Flicker felt a tremor of fear, but he stood his ground beside his friend. "What do we do?" he squeaked. Cardigan thought for a moment, her brows furrowed. "The imp seems to thrive on chaos and fear. My flowers bringing peace and calm, but they can't reach it in this darkness." Your smoke, Flicker. It's not fire, but it's disorienting, isn't it?" Flicker looked surprised. "Disorienting?" "Yes," Cardigan explained. "When you puff it out, it shimmers and obscures vision for a moment. Maybe, just maybe, if we combine our strengths..." Taking a deep breath, Cardigan gently pushed aside the vines. The crevice opened into a small, damp cavern. In the center, a shadowy figure writhed and chuckled. Small flickers of dark fire dancing around it. The imp. As soon as it saw them, the imp shrieked and sent a wave of dark flames towards them. Cardigan quickly exhaled a cloud of bluebells, their sweet scent momentarily confusing the imp. "Now, Flicker!" Cardigan urged. Flicker, his heart pounding, took a deep breath and puffed out a large cloud of his shimmering blueberry-scented smoke. It wasn't fire, but it billowed outwards, a swirling, disorienting haze that enveloped the imp. The imp sputtered and swatted at the smoke, its shadowy form flickering erratically. It clearly wasn't used to anything that wasn't destructive fire. Cardigan seized the opportunity. She focused all her will, and a cascade of luminous white lilies bloomed around the imp, their gentle light pushing back the darkness. The imp shrieked again, a sound of pure frustration. It recoiled from the light and the disorienting smoke, its shadowy form shrinking and fading. The sour smell weakened, and the dark flames flickered and died. Slowly the smoke cleared, and the lilies bathed the cavern in a soft glow. The imp was gone. Cardigan and Flicker looked at each other, a sense of relief washing over them. They had done it. They returned to the Whispering Valley, and as they did, the air felt cleaner, lighter. The fear that had gripped the valley began to dissipate. The other dragons who had been worried sick greeted them with cheers and astonished looks. You banished the imp?" a young red dragon stammered, looking at Flicker with a newfound respect. Cardigan smiled. "We did it together." Flicker's unique puff was surprisingly effective. Flicker puffed out a small cloud of blueberry smoke, this time not out of nervousness, but with a hint of pride, with other younger dragons watching in fascination. The next morning, Cardigan and Flicker met by the sacred tree. It was a large specimen with blue leaves that rustled secrets in the gentle breeze. Cardigan brought a basket of woven, soft flower stems, ready for their berry-picking adventure. "Where do you think the juiciest berries grow, Flicker?" Cardigan asked, her green scales shimmering in the sunlight. A little patch of forget-me-nots bloomed near her tail. Flicker sniffed the air, his blue snout twitching. "I think I smell some plump sunberries near the sparkling stream," he said confidently. "Follow me." Flicker led the way, his blue wings flapping excitedly, though he mostly stayed close to the ground. Cardigan floated gracefully above him, occasionally stopping to let a shower of daisies fall into a particularly bare patch of earth. As they walked, they heard a series of clumsy thumps and frustrated sighs coming from behind a cluster of ferns. "What was that?" Cardigan whispered, her flower breath pausing. Flicker peeked through the ferns. "Oh, it's Buster," he said, a hint of sadness in his voice. They stepped out from behind the ferns. They saw a young red dragon. He was bigger than Flicker, but looked very unhappy. His wings were drooping, and he was kicking at the ground with his claws. "Hello, Buster," Flicker said. "What's wrong?" Buster looked up, startled. His red scales seemed a little dull. "Oh, hey, Flicker. It's just flying practice," he mumbled, looking down again. "I can't seem to get off the ground properly." He flapped his wings awkwardly, lifting himself only a few inches before thudding back down. Cardigan floated closer, her flower scent calming the air. "It looks like you're trying really hard, Buster," she said. Buster sighed again. "The other red dragons are soaring so high, doing loop-de-loops. I feel stuck." He looked at his big, strong wings with frustration. They look like they would work, but they just don't. Flicker hopped closer to Buster. "I know how it feels," he said softly. "I can't breathe fire, and all the other blue dragons can't." Buster looked at Flicker, surprised. "You can't? But you're a dragon." "I was little when I found out I couldn't breathe fire, only flowers. Everyone's special in their own way," Cardigan said with a warm smile. "You might not be a natural flyer, Buster, but that doesn't mean you can't do other amazing things." "Like what?" Buster asked, a flicker of hope in his violet eyes. "Well," Cardigan said, "you look really strong. Maybe you're a great climber, or maybe you have a super powerful roar." Buster had never thought about that. He was pretty strong. He could push over big rocks without even trying. And his roar, well, it was certainly loud. Flicker added, "Maybe we can all find what you're good at. Cardigan can make beautiful flower paths. I'm good at finding berries, and maybe you're the best rock mover in the whole valley." Buster looked at Cardigan and Flicker. They were so different, yet they seemed so happy and accepting of each other. A small smile started to form on his face. Maybe you're right," Buster said. "Maybe flying isn't the only amazing thing." Cardigan gently blew a cluster of yellow daffodils towards Buster. "Exactly. There are so many wonderful things we can do. Let's go find those sunberries, and maybe Buster can show us his super strong rock-moving skills." And so, the unlikely trio continued their adventure, learning that being different wasn't a weakness, but a wonderful part of what made them special. Their berry-picking journey led them deeper into the valley, where the trees grew taller and the leaves seemed to whisper secrets in the wind. The air hummed with a gentle, magical energy. "This is the Whispering Woods," Flicker said, his blue eyes wide with a hint of awe. "My grandmother told me stories about this place. She said that wise dragons live here." Suddenly, a soft voice drifted through the trees.
Welcome, little ones.
Cardigan, Flicker, and Buster looked around, trying to see who was speaking. The voice seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Then, a magnificent purple dragon with flowing white hair emerged from a grove of shimmering silver birch trees. He was larger than the other dragons. His eyes held a deep, kind wisdom. A small, equally purple dragon with bright eyes curiously peeked out from behind his leg.
Greetings.
The large purple dragon said, his voice like gentle rustling leaves.
I am Elder Theron, and this is my granddaughter, Aurora.
The little purple dragon, Aurora, stepped forward shyly. "Hello," she whispered, her voice as soft as a butterfly's wing. Cardigan gently floated forward. "It's an honor to meet you. I'm Cardigan, and these are my friends Flicker and Buster," she gestured. Flicker and Buster both bowed their heads respectfully. Elder Theron smiled, his purple scales shimmering in the dappled sunlight.
We heard you approaching. The valley often whispers the arrival of new friends.
He looked at Buster.
I sense a strong spirit within you, young red dragon, even if your wings are still finding their song.
Buster puffed out his chest a little, feeling proud that the wise elder dragon could sense his strength. Elder Theron then turned his gaze to Flicker.
And you, little blue one, your heart shines with kindness, a light more valuable than any flame.
Flicker's scales tingled with warmth. He had never thought of his lack of fire as a good thing. Finally, Elder Theron looked at Cardigan, his eyes twinkling.
And you, dear green dragon, Your breath brings life and beauty wherever you go. The valley rejoices in your blooming presence.
Aurora, the little purple dragon, had been watching them with wide eyes. Now she took a tentative step forward. "Cardigan," she said softly, "your flowers are so pretty. Can you make me a purple one?" Cardigan smiled and took a gentle breath. A delicate lavender blossom appeared in her hands, and she carefully gave it to Aurora. Aurora's face lit up. "Thank you," she whispered, holding the flower close.
Aurora is very curious about the world outside the Whispering Woods.
She hasn't had many chances to explore.
"Maybe we could explore together," Flicker suggested, his tail wagging. "We were on our way to find some sunberries." Aurora's eyes sparkled. "Sunberries? Can I come?" she asked, looking at her grandfather. Elder Theron smiled.
Of course, little one. It would be good for you to make new friends and see the wonders beyond our valley. But remember to always be kind and respectful of others and their hopes.
And so, their little group grew by one. Cardigan, Flicker, Buster, and now Aurora. The curious little purple dragon from the Whispering Woods set off together, ready for more adventures and the sweet taste of sunberries. As they continued their search for sunberries, Aurora skipped excitedly beside Flicker, her purple scales shimmering like amethyst in the sunlight. Buster lumbered along more confidently now, occasionally using his strong claws to move fallen logs out of their path. Cardigan floated above, leaving a trail of cheerful wildflowers in their wake. "My grandfather says there are many amazing creatures in these lands beyond the Whispering Valley," Aurora said, her voice full of wonder. "He tells stories of animals with strange and wonderful magic." Suddenly, Flicker stopped, his nose twitching. "Wait, I smell something. Sweet, but also a little bit earthy." They followed Flicker's nose, which led them to a small, mossy-covered burrow nestled beneath the roots of an ancient oak tree. Peeking out from the burrow was a pair of long, twitching ears. A moment later, a rabbit with wise, twinkling eyes and a blue cloak emerged. He leaned on a staff made from an oak branch with a carrot on top. "Well, hello there, little dragons," the rabbit said, his voice a gentle rumble. "What brings you to my humble abode?" Cardigan floated closer. "Hello, we're looking for sunberries, and Flicker said he smelled something interesting here." The rabbit chuckled. "Sunberries, you say? A fine choice. I happen to know a patch not too far from here. My name is Rayden, by the way, and this," he patted his carrot staff, "is Camden." Camden seemed to hum softly as Rayden spoke his name. "It's nice to meet you, Rayden," Cardigan replied. "I'm Cardigan, and these are my friends, Flicker, Buster, and Aurora." Rayden's eyes twinkled as he looked at each of them. A flower dragon, fireless blue, strong red, and a curious purple. A delightful mix indeed. "Your staff is amazing," Aurora exclaimed, her eyes wide with fascination. "It's a carrot." Rayden smiled. "Indeed it is. Camden's no ordinary carrot. He helps me find my way, and he has a few other little secrets too." "Do you really know where the sunberries are?" Flicker asked eagerly. "I do," Rayden replied, "but the path there has a bit of a shortcut through a tunnel. It's a little dark, but it will save us some time." Buster looked a little nervous. "A tunnel? Is it big? Big enough for all of us," Rayden assured him kindly, "and Camden here will light the way." The staff glowed with a blue hue. Rayden led them to a hidden opening behind his burrow, concealed by a curtain of ivy. It was indeed a tunnel, the entrance dark and mysterious. Cardigan gently blew a stream of glowing flowers into the tunnel, illuminating the entrance with soft, flickering light. "Don't worry, Buster," Flicker said reassuringly. "We'll all go together." Aurora took Flicker's hand in hers. "It'll be an adventure." Taking a deep breath, Buster stepped into the tunnel, followed by Flicker, Aurora, and Cardigan, with Rayden and his glowing carrot staff bringing up the rear. The Whispering Valley had held many secrets, and this dark tunnel seemed to be leading them to another one. The tunnel was cool and damp, the air filled with the earthy scent of moss and damp stone. Camden, Rayden's carrot staff, cast an icy blue glow that danced on the tunnel walls, revealing strange and interesting patterns in the rock. Aurora held tightly to Flicker's hand, her blue eyes wide with curiosity. Buster scurried ahead, his red scales reflecting the light from Camden. Cardigan walked cautiously behind them, occasionally releasing a soft shower of glow-in-the-dark mushrooms to add to the illumination. "Listen," Camden whispered. "Can you hear that?" They all stopped to listen. A faint rhythmic dripping sound echoed through the tunnel. "It's just water," Buster said, a little nervously. He wasn't a big fan of enclosed spaces. "Perhaps," Rayden said, "but sometimes the tunnels of this valley carry other whispers too, echoes of the past." As they walked further, the dripping sound grew louder, and they noticed small puddles forming on the ground. Suddenly they heard another sound, a faint, almost ghostly sigh that seemed to come from the depths of the tunnel. Aurora squeezed Flicker's hand tighter. "What was that?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know," Buster admitted, his own scales prickling with a bit of unease. Cardigan gently floated closer to Aurora and Flicker, releasing a calm scent of lavender. "It's all right," she said softly. "We're all here together." Rayden held Camden aloft. "These tunnels sometimes play tricks on your ears. It could just be the wind whistling through the cracks in the rock." But then they heard it, a soft, mournful sigh, followed by a faint whisper that sounded like anger. "Did you hear that?" Flicker exclaimed, his usual cheerful tone replaced with a hint of worry. "Yes," Rayden said, his brow furrowed. "That didn't sound like the wind." Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet vibrated slightly. Small pebbles danced on the floor. "What's happening?" Buster asked, his voice a little shaky. "I'm not sure," Rayden said, his eyes scanning the tunnel walls, "but I have a feeling we're not alone down here." Just then, a pair of glowing red eyes appeared in the darkness ahead. They were small and beady, and they seemed to hold a spark of malice. More pairs of eyes began to appear, dotting in the darkness, like angry embers. "Imps," Rayden hissed, his grip tightening on Camden. "I thought we had seen the last of them after their leader was dealt with." Cardigan remembered the previous adventure, the one she and Flicker had been a part of before they met Buster and Aurora. They had indeed banished a troublesome imp leader who had been causing trouble in the flower fields. It seemed his followers hadn't forgotten. The imps began to creep closer, their tiny forms shadowy in the dim light. They chittered and growled, their red eyes fixed on the dragons. "It seems they come for revenge," Rayden said grimly. "We need to get out of this tunnel, and fast."
This is the end of part 1. Subscribe for part 2.